Welcome to the Grounded in Simplicity podcast, where we are helping moms get back to basics and learn to find joy in being less busy. I'm Danielle from the Rustic Elk, joined by my good friend Bonnie from the Not So Modern Housewife. And this week we are talking about the reality of life balance and its lack of existence.
Well, I think that we tell ourselves that life balance means that we can juggle all of the plates at the same time or keep all the plates spinning or whatever that analogy is. And that's not it at all. We've grown up being made to feel so guilty if we don't keep all of the things going at the same time. But then also we internalize that. So now we have that voice in our ears that if I can't do all of this, then I must be lacking as a human, as a mom, as a wife, because we've set this ridiculous, expectation for ourselves that is not attainable by the average human being.
Right. Well, like we've talked about before, and busyness and how it's supposed to be like your measure of success in our society. And so we feel like if we're not constantly busy and constantly juggling 10 million things, then we're not successful. So, we must not be a good human or employee or mom or whatever it may be. So I think we have to kind of step back and realize that, you're not supposed to do all of the things. Never in the history of mankind has one person had the entire world on their shoulders, but we act like it has to be.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it, it goes back to this picture perfect 1950s wife that we need to be cleaning the house and ironing our husband's shirts in our Sunday best and pearls and high heels. And we need to have this tiny little waist and, all this kind of stuff. I saw this meme recently. I think it was probably on Facebook. That was we think that we should be able to do all of these things that the 1950s housewife was expected to do. But we forget that back then it was socially acceptable to smoke cigarettes and there was cocaine in the cough medicine.
Right.
So we're living in a different world, folks.
Right.
And expectation was never naturally attainable.
Right. And they didn't have the modern world isn't quite the same as it was in the 1950s either. Our calendars are different, and more women are in the outside workforce and they don't stay home. And so our workloads are completely different than they were in the 1950s.
Yeah. Well, and we had closer communities. So, you truly had a tribe. You had, you had people who spent their entire lives and never physically left their county. So,
right.
The entire family lives right there. The entire family does everything together. I'm not saying it was the best environment because we all know that there were a lot of toxic things that then got passed down to the baby boomers and then on to us. But if you needed help getting all of the stuff done, then you had your support system and you had a family right there that could help you do it, or at the very minimum, watch your kids so that you could get it done.
Right. And, I know we had grocery stores and stuff in the 50s, but it still wasn't as predominant as it is now, having, to go to the grocery and get a bunch of food. They had milk delivery. Most people, towns, at least around here in Indiana, they had backyard chickens. My grandma grew up in the late 40s, 50s, early 40s and 50s. She graduated in 1960. I know that she's told me stories about her mom go out in the backyard and grab a chicken and wring its neck, and that was dinner. And they lived in town. That was just, that was normal. So,
yeah,
the women weren't going to the grocery store every day to grab food to put on the table. They were, all the work was done right there.
Yeah.
More so
and
than
not to mention,
now.
Yeah, but you think about, most of the working adults in the 50s. I don't know how I ended up honing in on the 50s, but but honestly, if I really look at the expectations on women now in modern times, whether you are living the homesteading lifestyle or you're just a suburban mom, whatever, a lot of it does seem to stem from that time period. But anyway, a lot of the working adults in the 50s were born during the Great Depression. The grandparents lived through the Great Depression. So that's still very much in everyone's minds. They're probably still emotionally and financially recovering from that. And so, and not to mention cost of living was so much lower back then. But we're food prices are another topic for another episode. Anyway, but it's just there was a totally different mindset back then. And yes, there was a lot more of a like self-sufficiency, frugal living emphasis, but it was still very much survival. It wasn't because, hey, we have the option to do this and we're choosing to do this. It was like literally, this is just what you do. You have no other choice.
Right. Right. Up until, I would say probably closer to the 60s, that was just what you did. And like you said, you had all these people that lived through the Great Depression, or their parents lived through the Great Depression, fresh in their minds. And things hadn't changed to where we were so disconnected from our food, and where women were so an integral part of our workforce. I know that most women started going to work during the Second World War, but we were still at that stage where not as many women worked outside of the home. So they had time to do those things. And up until women really started the workforce, if you think about it, our jobs were just to be nurturers and, raise kids and milk the cow, or, whatever it may be. And the man did all the hard, however you want to label it. And it's definitely
right
since then.
Yes, the man sacrificed by leaving the home every day, and all of the mental burden that comes with trying to keep your children alive and your house from burning down. But he was the one who was sacrificing because he had to, go out and do his thing uninterrupted in an office or wherever he was. I'm not bitter at all. But really, I mean,
you think about it, men used to be home too. Before the Industrial Revolution, especially, people were, both parents were home. And so, you just shared the workload. And then it became the men after the Industrial Revolution, the men worked outside of the home and went to a job to pay for the things. And the woman stayed home. And then the women started to force. And yet we didn't start to share the workload at home.
Right. And you think about it, there was really only a couple of generations. I mean, really, probably only like one generation between there, because part of the reason that the Depression was so significant and hit so many families so hard was the family farm was their livelihood. And so when they were no longer able to sell things from the farm, not to mention if they were in the Dust Bowl and going through, a famine during the same time and everything that went on then, they literally lost everything. And a lot of men had a really hard time coping with that. So they saw security in going and working from, in a factory, because it was a steady paycheck and they didn't have to worry about, whether or not they could put food on the table. Back then, well, eventually we had unions, and then we had, pensions and all of these things. So like for our parents, getting a job outside of the home was the most stable and secure thing you could do for your family. But yes, there was still that expectation that everything inside of the home was the woman's responsibility.
Right. And I think that a part of it is definitely I would say as a society need to learn and teach that it's both, if you have two in your home, it's both of your jobs to do all the house stuff, within reason. Like I do more than my husband does, but my husband's away from home for 14 hours a day. But when he's home, he does things. He pulled the vacuum out the other day.
Oh, no, that's impressive.
So, as a society, we have to realize that we learn to share the load of all of the things. But as women and as mothers, we have to realize that, it's not really all up, and you don't have to do everything every single day. You have to let things go, and you can't feel guilty. My kids are watching a TV show right now, so I'm not going to feel guilty that I'm sitting here working with you instead
Right.
of being, center attention with my kids, and there's in the sink and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, and um, yeah, actually, you mentioned that, and it's funny because so many people get up in arms about like having screens in your car, like for road trips and stuff like that, because, oh, we grew up like we sang all these songs and we played games the whole time. You know what? As the parent, I do not want to be singing songs and playing games the entire time I am driving to Ohio. Like, I'm just like, I just go to the grocery store and I grit my teeth when my kids say they want to play I Spy. Like, I'm like, seriously, we can only guess so many blue, green, and brown things. Like, really, because that's all. By the time you drive past it, if someone hasn't guessed it by the time you drive past it, then that's it. Game over. Whose turn is it next? Like, so I am perfectly fine with my kids having the screens if they will leave me alone, because honestly, riding in the car is usually the only time I can listen to audiobooks or podcasts. And that's kind of like what fills me up. And the only way I'm going to get them to not annoy the crap out of me because we don't want to listen to your broadcast is if they have something else that they are watching or listening to. So,
right.
Sometimes you do it for your own sanity and it's okay. Like, it's not the end of the world if we take advantage of the technology that's available to us. I'm not saying that we need to like completely become zombies to it. We need to set limits. Like, we need to understand that we are the ones who are in charge of it, but it's still
right.
not the end of the world if we use it.
Right. As long as you use it in moderation, a good way, however you want to, word it, and you're not just, always diverting to the TV or the tablet, of course. I mean, you do you, but at the same time, I don't think that that's probably a very good idea.
Well,
if
I
it
try
was
not to.
nicer out, I would put them outside, but it's not very nice
Yeah.
here. So,
Well, and I actually saw something. I don't know. I think it was one of my parenting groups that was saying that rather than time out, it means it's time to go outside. Because I don't like timeouts just for the fact that I have to sit there and micromanage my kids to make sure they stay in timeout. And like, that doesn't really help either of us. So if they are upset about something or they're having a meltdown or they're not listening or whatever, it's probably a sign that we both need like a mental break, and they just need to go outside and like swing on the swing set, go play with baby goats, go chase a chicken, like just go outside and get some fresh air and
right.
unplug for a little bit.
Exactly.
I
And
mean,
I think
honestly,
that unplug definitely is the key
yeah.
word. Sometimes we definitely just need to, unplug ourselves too.
Oh, yeah. I start getting annoyed with like the stupidity of people. That's when it's time to turn off Facebook for the day. Like,
Happens
and
in
I
about
mean,
5 seconds, but
well, yeah, some days are better than others. Um, but I mean, really, like, I think that I almost get bored with social media. And then I'm just like, I don't even want to get on it because it's not serving me. It's not making me feel better when I get on it. I'm just ending up in a worse mood after I've been on it. And so, yeah, like I mean, and even I enjoy TikTok because I don't know, it does tend to put me in a better mood. I don't know, maybe it's all of the 13-year-old pugs, but um, I still, when we lost our miniature horse last month, um, I took like a month off from TikTok because I'm like, I would kind of check it every once in a while, but I'm like, I'm not in the right mental space for it. I don't I don't want to be creating anything. I don't want to be interacting with people. I need some time to just process and decompress um and that's okay. Like I felt a lot better by taking that break and giving myself that space and not having to feel like I needed to like put on a facade for anybody else because I needed to process my grief. So,
And I think
and not
that
to mention I was going through a lot of other crap too with my eczema, but that's
I I think that's important though to, you talked about social media and how it makes you feel crappy. Well, first off, I think it's designed that way because, you see, first off, you either see all these people that you think have it better than you because of the way, their curated squares look on Instagram, or you see people with differing opinions that want to just argue on Facebook. And I think we have to, take a step back from social media and put a limit on it, or just, like get rid of it altogether and, have like a social media cleanse or whatever it may be. And that can definitely help you find balance in your life, because when we end up mindlessly scrolling, then we're wasting time that we could be doing something else to find a better balance in our lives.
yeah. And like, you know, there are times I will use like entertainment to just kind of decompress. Lately, I've been using music more than anything for that, because I can listen to it and it kind of like I'll pick something with a nice upbeat tempo and it'll get me motivated, and so I can keep like working and doing things while it's playing. But if if you're using Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or whatever to help kind of get your mind off of things, I think how do I want to put this? It's important to set a timer for yourself.
Right.
So, and it's like, it's similar to, I think it was Hal Elrod's book, Miracle Equation. He's same one who did Miracle Mornings. Same guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he has another book called Miracle Equation, where he talks about going through his cancer treatments and everything. And even getting the cancer diagnosis, basically, he only gives himself 5 minutes to feel bad. And then after 5 minutes, he needs to pull himself together and just kind of accept it and move forward. And he's like, it's definitely something that takes practice. He's like, I'm not telling you that if you've never done this before, you can just magically feel better after 5 minutes. But if you've practiced this and you only give yourself 5 minutes to buffer, 5 minutes to feel bad, 5 minutes to just kind of like take a moment to yourself to process whatever's going on. And then at the end of those 5 minutes, it's like, okay, now I need to move forward and get done and, figure out what I'm going to do about this.
Right.
And I think it can be the same thing with that, especially if we're using it to buffer, avoid, whatever else is going on, or even if it's just trying to get rid of the feeling of overwhelm. I think that if you set yourself a timer for 5, 10, 15 minutes, and it's like, okay, that's enough of that. Now I need to figure out, what I'm going to do about this, or how, I need to deal with this, because obviously putting it off and trying to avoid it only ends up adding to the anxiety long term.
Right. I heard somebody was talking earlier about making decisions, and she was talking about how like she'll have an important decision she needs to make, and she'll be in the middle of other things, but she needs to make this decision now. It's business, but it can be, about anything. And so she'll stop whatever she's doing and she goes in her closet and she just takes a deep breath and she gives herself 5 minutes, and then she can make a good decision instead of just, I made this decision and a crappy one because I made it in the midst of, and I just said, yeah, just do that. Just like, if you ask you something and you're in the middle of 10 other things and you're like, yeah, whatever, go do it. And then they've got toothpaste all over the walls because you told them they could paint with tooth. I mean, you know what I mean? Sometimes you just have to take a deep breath.
Into trouble so many times because my kids are interrupting something that I'm focusing on, and I just go like, yeah, okay. No idea what I just agreed to. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I've even heard that with making purchases, like especially sometimes, especially if I'm like feeling overwhelmed, I will feel like I need this thing right now because somehow it is magically going to help my overwhelm. It's going to help me be better organized, have better time management, something to fix this problem that I'm dealing with.
Hmm.
And then I'll just buy it. And then either it's not really what I wanted or I don't end up using it. It doesn't fix the problem. And so what I've heard a lot of times is put whatever it is in your cart and don't check out for 24 hours. And then after 24 hours, you decide, do you still need that thing? Do you like, is it actually going to fix the problem or whatever it is?
Correct.
Unfortunately, as much as I wish it would, throwing money at a problem very rarely actually fixes the problem.
Unless your roof is leaking.
Well, but then you still have to hire a good roofer. You can't just hire the first roofer that gives you a sales pitch.
Yeah, that's true. You still have to make a decision.
Yeah. Back to moms and life balance. I don't know. I guess that is kind of it's still life balance because the problem is if we do avoid too much, we're never going to find that balance with anything.
Right.
Because
if we don't take a minute to ourselves, then we make decisions which affect our ability to balance our lives because we just bought the $300 thing that did not fix anything. And now we have to come up with the money to pay for the $300 thing.
Right.
So, or clean the toothpaste off the walls.
Well, and so I think a lot of this comes back to, we talked about how a lot of this seems to fall on women. The problem is, I don't think that at least most modern husbands are really trying to put that burden all on their wives, or they're at least not trying to come across as they're putting that burden all on their wives. And obviously this doesn't apply to like single moms. I honestly don't know how they survive, but they are stronger people than I am. But we have to realize that a lot of times that burden is in our heads and we're putting that burden on ourselves because of whatever. I mean, it is because of some kind of mindset that we've been raised with. And we've been taught that's what the wife does. That's what you have to do as a wife, as a mother. And to me, like family should be more of a team effort. And when you are in a family, and we talked about this a little bit, like when families lived closer together and it was more of a community and you were related to half the people in your town, that sense of family, all like, regardless of your differences, you all pulled together and you supported each other and you did whatever it took to keep each other afloat.
Right.
The biggest difference with now is that a lot of our families are more spread out, and and there may be family differences to where you can't rely on that family even if they are local. So with our family, both because of geographical separation and differing opinions, we can really only rely on the people who live in our house. But to me, it's important like to teach my children that as a member of the family, we all help each other. Like if we see something that needs to be done, if we see something that's wrong, it needs to be fixed, then we don't need to just place it on someone else and say, well, that's so-and-so's responsibility because that's their pet or their mess or whatever. Like we all come together and we all help each other. I know I have a 4-year-old who still dumps all of the toys all over the floor. And I'm still trying to teach my 2 older ones that regardless of who made the mess,
exactly,
we all have to work together to pick it up.
Every day.
And I'm still working on my husband there too. But, a lot of times, I'm getting overwhelmed with all of the stuff that I feel like I need to do, when if I would just tell my husband, hey, look, like, I need you to do this. Because I've always kind of joked about this, but it is legitimate. Men need a poster board with like bold letters that specifically says what you need. You
Yes.
cannot assume that they will read between the lines
No,
because
they just
they
won't.
don't see the lines.
Right.
I can say, like, I can complain all day long about how I can't function because the kitchen is messy or or whatever. The house is cluttered. We need less stuff, whatever. What I need to say is, husband, I love you. You need to get rid of this, or I need you to do this. Like, he needs specific instructions. And I can't write it out in a honey-do list and stick it on the fridge because it's way too easy for him to walk past it and pretend it never existed. Like, I have to spell out, this is what I need you to be doing right now.
Right.
So, and yeah, it is hard. Like, both of our husbands work a lot. Now, granted, since COVID, my husband's been spending more time working at home, which has been a blessing and a curse. Like, it legitimately took me 6 months to get used to the idea of him being in the house every day. And there are still times
now, so
I know there are still times where I'm like, can you just go away? Can you can you just go away? Just go away. Just go away. Like, whether it is him coming out of the office to tell me about some issue with a coworker or a job or whatever, a client, or if it's just to him come out and tell a really bad dad joke, like, can you just go away? I just don't need this right now. But now that we are 2 years into this, on the days when he does go to the office, right around like 2:30, 3 o'clock, I'm texting him, so how late are you working today? So when are you gonna be home? Because I've hit my breaking point. And I want to make sure that you are not working until 9 p.m. because I need a break. Or you will
which
come
makes it
home
nice
and
for
all
you.
3 children will be locked out of the house. Yes, it makes it nice for me. It also makes it nice that it's not 0 degrees outside and I have the option of locking my children out of the house. But before CPS gets called on me, it doesn't happen that often. So,
and they're safe and they're taken care of. It's not like you're not watching them or, making sure that they don't kill each other.
Trust me, my neighbors know everything I do in my yard. My children are fine. Like, there are at least 3 people watching my property at all times so they can gossip about us. So my children are being supervised.
I think as especially moms, we tend to think that we have to be martyrs and we have to do everything ourselves, and it makes it very, very difficult to find a balance where you're comfortable with, all these plates spinning if you don't, let go of the martyrdom and just kind of learn to delegate things or let things go. Like, you don't have to have no dust on your coffee table or all of your dishes washed all the time or all of your laundry folded and put away. Like, those things aren't really important. And they're not the things your kids are going to remember anyway. Like, oh, I remember my mom always had all the socks folded and put in the drawer. I mean, it's not going to be important to them. So I think we have to learn to let go of that stuff and delegate and let things go. And that we're teaching our kids these things. And I think we have to take that into consideration as well. Because if we're constantly busying ourselves with 10 million things we have to do, then they see that and they think that, especially girls, but even boys, boys assume that that's what women are supposed to do. And girls assume that that's what they're supposed to grow up and do. And then we end up in the same vicious cycle over and over and over again. And so I think we have to let things go and learn to balance, things and do things that we enjoy. Like, it doesn't have to be all about your kids. It doesn't have to be all about your farm. It doesn't have to be all about keeping your house clean and doing housework or being somebody's employee or an entrepreneur or any of those things. Sometimes we have to let all of that go and just do something for us.
Right.
This episode was brought to you by Kitchen Botanicals, your sustainable gardening headquarters. Stop by kitchenbotanicals.com and get a look at our 2022 seed varieties, as well as supplies and pest control products to help you with your organic garden. 2022 is a great time to take care of yourself with our Pampered Gardener subscription box. Every month, you'll receive all natural self-care products, untreated heirloom seeds, high-quality garden tools, organic garden amendments, cute and practical supplies, and fun products that we know you'll love. This is your opportunity to take care of yourself in the garden. I started the Pampered Gardener subscription box because I had gone through a time of not taking care of myself and dealing with the stress that it put onto my body. I was ill, I was tapped out, and I felt like I couldn't possibly pour any more out of my empty cup. So I created the Pampered Gardener subscription box for women like me who wanted to get back to what they enjoy, but also wanted to love themselves. So we've put together this collection of gardening and self-care products that are geared towards women who love to garden. You'll get things such as gloves, lotion, bags, hats, sunscreen, mosquito repellent, things that you can actually use, but also things that you'll enjoy. And don't worry, there will still be plenty of gardening tools, seeds. We've created a subscription box like no other, by gardeners for gardeners. Order your own box today.
Like, there are a lot of things that I wish I had time for every day. But the fact is, I have a 4-year-old, a 7-year-old, and an 11-year-old. The 11-year-old is finally to the point where, for the most part, I can give him a task and he will do it. I will have to remind him 30 times, but he is capable of at least doing most tasks on his own, maybe with some guidance. The 7-year-old is at that point where I need to kind of train her up a little bit. I really need to like do the things with her, support her, because everything still feels very big to her and very overwhelming. And so I need to help her like breaking things down. And I mean, really, even the 11-year-old still has moments where he feels very overwhelmed. And I need to help him just see things one piece at a time.
Right.
And then there's the 4-year-old who I could literally spend the entire day just following him around and cleaning up his messes. So, I mean, and not to mention he is the baby and he is a mama's boy. And like, he is driving his brother and sister nuts because he comes up to me like every 10 minutes just to tell me that he likes me and to give me a kiss. So he wants all the cuddles. He wants all the attention. Like, if he sees me focused on something else, he's got to bring the attention back to himself. So I am not going to be able to do all of the things. And that's okay. And it's okay if my daughter's favorite food is stuffed crust cheese pizza and hot dogs wrapped in croissant rolls, like, and macaroni and cheese. We can't forget the macaroni and cheese. But we're only here for this period of time. And I am like, my main objective here is to raise decent human beings. So it's okay if I can't get all of the things done right now, because I still have to, put so much time and focus into them. Because really, we're only a few years away from them being teenagers and they don't need me anymore and they know everything. I know, right? All right. So we did kind of talk, or you talked about this a little bit, is how we're allowed to have goals and hobbies. And some, like, my husband is pretty good about this. If I say, like, I need a day to do this, then he will take all 3 kids and go and do something else so that I can just do this, so I can focus. It's my kids I usually have to set boundaries with. Like, I cannot be mommy all of the time. Sometimes, like, daddy is literally right there. I mean, I'm sure your kids do it too. My husband will be in the kitchen getting something. I am like sitting in the living room working on my computer, and my kids come into me. Yep. What's daddy getting in the kitchen? Why don't you go ask daddy?
Right. Or, hey mom, can you go in the kitchen and, no, how about you ask him? He's right there.
Right. Like, can I have a glass of milk? I literally have to ask your dad to move out of my way so that I can even get the milk out of the refrigerator. So could you just go ask him? Like, he's right there. So yes. So it's usually and I will be the first to admit I am really bad at setting and holding boundaries with my kids. Because I can't handle the tears and the meltdowns. And I logically I know that I am making it worse for myself in the long run.
You are.
However, I'm just like, you know what? Never mind. This isn't worth the drama. This isn't worth the stress. You are raising my blood pressure. Just go eat the chocolate and leave me alone.
I think that definitely ties into time management as far as setting boundaries, especially with our children, because we can't, especially if we're stay-at-home moms and we homeschool like you and I do, we can't get away from being mom unless we learn to set those boundaries. And if we can't get away from being mom, then we can't get anything else done because, we always have our mom hat on. We don't ever have, I want to sit here and crochet a blanket hat on, or I just want to sit and veg on the couch and watch this silly television show or scroll Facebook for a minute, or, whatever it may be, put my entrepreneur hat on and work.
Hold on. So you're saying that you need time to buffer and watch a screen and be entertained? Hold on, let's rewind.
No, never. But if we don't, learn to set boundaries with our kids, like when I work, I'm trying really, really hard to get them to realize that I'm working. And when mommy has her work hat on, mommy's not mommy. And I'm not going to, referee you guys. And I'm not going to find 10,000 things for you to do. And if you come ask me a question when I'm in the middle of working, the answer is no. It's always going to be no. You should have asked me when I told you I was getting ready to start working.
Well, and I think too, like you were talking about the time management is, I think it does help then when we set work hours for ourselves or school hours or whatever, say from 8 to 9 is mommy time. And I am going to be drinking wine and reading a book in the bathtub and I'm locking the bathroom door and no one is to knock on the bathroom door. Like sometimes that's what it is,
Right.
But holding that and saying, no, this is my work time because, I will admit I'm really trying to spend less time on my phone. But a lot of that has come from my kids actually telling me you're always on your phone and, you never let us use your phone and you always say that you're working. And it's like, well, I do a lot of work stuff on my phone. And so, that's kind of why I actually scheduled do not disturb times on my phone for when I know I need to be doing other things or I need to be focusing on my kids. I need to be making dinner. I need to be working, whatever it is, because every time I would get a message, I would feel like I need to reply to it right now. And it's like, no, you know what? It'll be okay if they have to wait a couple hours for a reply. It's not the end of the world. All right. But yeah, whatever it is, it might not be work. It might literally be, whatever the thing is that recharges you. So maybe it is going out for coffee with friends. I've actually held that boundary where I have told my kids, I am going out to lunch with a friend. No kids are coming. It is mommy time. If my 11-year-old found out that we ate sushi, he would have a flip. Anyway, or, it might be I'm reading a book, I'm working on a sewing project, I'm knitting, I'm just I think it was actually yesterday, I locked my kids out of my bedroom just so I could do a 20-minute hypnosis session because I was like, I need to slow down my brain and focus. And I'm getting way too stressed out about stuff and I need to do this for me. And so, yeah, sometimes, and yes, sometimes it means we have to lock the door to set a physical boundary, but it's still,
I think
making that time for ourselves.
Right. I think if we, learn to set boundaries when mom's working, when you're doing anything, it makes you as a mom more available to your kids. If I have time to myself to sit and read a book or watch a show or, and it's my time and nobody can bother me. It's my time. I don't care if you're soaking in the bathtub or whatever it is that you want to do. It's going to help you decompress and just be yourself. Then you can show up 100% for your kids. But if you're constantly trying to, do all the things and juggle it and avoid doing the things that you want to do so that you can decompress and just, I can just be Danielle, then I think it's harder for you to show up for your kids.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're there for them, but you know what I mean? Like, your time with them isn't as, how do I want to say this? You're more distracted, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's two parts. So one, you are refilling your cup. You are recharging it usually will help you just feel better, like mentally and physically, when you've had that time to just do what you enjoy and not constantly giving of yourself and not constantly focusing on what everybody else wants and needs.
Right.
But then also, like, if you've scheduled that time for yourself, then you know that, okay, I don't need to worry about like getting time for myself right now. I can focus just on this. I can focus on this project, on cleaning the house, on taking care of my kids, on whatever is important for my family, because I know I'm getting this time later.
Right.
And it needs to be like on an almost daily basis, not like once a month or once a week.
Right.
So,
Because, I hear people say that they don't have time for, I guess you can call it self-care or whatever you want to call it. But, if you don't make time for yourself, then you're not going to be able to balance the other time that you have to do the other things. Like, I feel like you just said, you're going to have that time later. So, that you're going to have a minute to yourself. And if you don't have that minute, then you're constantly running around in circles, I guess. And
yeah.
so then I don't feel like I get as much done on the days where I don't do something other than, be an entrepreneur and be a mom and be a housewife and, all of these different plates that I'm spinning around. If I don't take a minute to just be Danielle, then I don't get as much done.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I definitely think that it helps us refocus and like it helps just keep our mind straight. But yeah, I need that creative time. Like I need it.
Right.
And the years where I have not put focus towards that and I have not given I literally say years because I have a thick head and apparently it takes me years to figure out that I need something that is missing. But yeah, the times when I have not put that focus there, then I literally feel like a shell of myself and my anxiety goes up and I just can't give other people all of me. And,
Right.
I always say that, well, and not all of me, but you know what I mean? I can't give them what they need. But like I always say, people make time for what is important to them. A lot of times we will say, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for that. When really it is just, I am not willing to make time for that.
Right.
But along with that, I think people seem to think that if I make myself a priority, then my family is no longer a priority. If I'm important, then my family is no longer important. And that's like not, they can both be important. Like it doesn't have to be an all or none.
Right.
So, we take time for ourselves. We make time for ourselves because our family is important. And because we want to be able to, one, show them what it is to be a healthy adult, show them what they should make priorities for as they become adults. And guess what? We're doing our children a disservice when we're trying to do everything for them and be everything for them 100% of the time. They like our jobs as mothers are successful when our children can leave the nest and be fully functional human beings, like not under our care. So,
right.
but a lot of that comes back to like showing them what's important, showing them what we need to be our best and feel our best.
Right. I think it's important for your kids to see that you make yourself a priority versus, trying to do all the things and be there for them all the time. So that when they do leave the nest, that they know that they need to make themselves a priority. And so that we can get away from this, societal norm of we're constantly busy. because, it just puts us in this, bad, crappy frame of mind because you can't constantly be busy like that. That's not good balance. If you're constantly
Right.
busy or overwhelmed and have 10 million things that you feel like you have to do, then you don't have any life balance at all. And thankfully, while I think that life balance is very difficult to achieve, I don't usually feel like that.
Yeah. Well, and I'm getting there. I mean, there have definitely been times where I'm like, I literally feel like I'm running around in circles and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm missing right now.
Right.
Like I can tell that something is missing, but I don't know what it is. Like, what am I forgetting? And the moment that you decide that you don't need to like try to focus on everything all at once, then that's when that kind of can calm down. I mean, and it takes practice. Like you will, for a long time, you will feel like you're not doing enough or you should be doing more. And you're going to have people in your life that are telling you you're not doing enough or you should be doing more. And unfortunately, speaking of setting boundaries, sometimes we need to silence those voices in more ways than one, whether
Right.
it means blocking them on Facebook or unfollowing them or whatever. Maybe that's part of the reason that I don't spend a whole lot of time on Instagram because I have never, I think I have had so much pressure my entire life to like always be perfect that I can't stand the perfection.
Right.
Like, I don't want anyone to see me as perfect. I don't want anyone to assume that I'm perfect. I don't want anyone to assume that I think I'm perfect. Like, I want them to see the broken pieces. Maybe not all of the clutter that's in my house, but at least, I'll show them a curated amount of clutter in my house. But, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to come off as that person.
Right.
I think that's why I laughed that you thought that I was like so prim and proper when we first met. I'm like,
I don't know why I thought that. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe your profile picture made you look that way. I don't know.
maybe. And honestly, I mean, back then I was still kind of living under that. I need to come off as having everything put together. Like, the whole
Right.
fake it till you make it. And I'm just like, nope, please. I'm over here faking it. I have no problem with you knowing that I'm faking it because
When you
I
sent
have
me
no
that,
idea what I'm talking about.
when you sent me that coffee shop meme earlier, I was like, I'm so glad I started talking to her.
I knew that you could appreciate that one on a deep personal level.
I did.
All right. Because I don't want to get an explicit rating on this podcast, I will not read what was on the meme.
That's why I just called it the coffee shop meme.
Just know that it involved some snarkiness and tequila.
Yeah.
So I was starting to say like stay off of platforms that make you feel ick.
Right. And I like Instagram. I actually talked to several people on Instagram and DMs and stuff like that. It's actually how I met the woman that sold us the pig that we put in the freezer. But I think that with any social media, whether it be Instagram or TikTok or anywhere else, that people have to realize that all of that content is typically curated. Like it's just little snippets of people's lives. It's not the big picture. And I think like for you and I, that's really difficult because, how do we curate the content? I want to be authentic and real, but at the same time, I don't necessarily want them to see, that my house is torn apart because, I have 3 kids and a 4-year-old
Right.
that,
Well, and like, I hate to say it, but especially for homesteaders and farmers, there are so many people that have like curated this image of livestock as pets on Instagram that then we end up looking like horrible human beings because our animals live in mud or they don't have curtains on their nest boxes. And so I think that's also part of my issue with it is I feel like it's I don't know. It's fed into that whole PETA mindset of like animals or no matter how I say this, I'm going to sound like a horrible human being. But I don't know, basically just that like there needs to be this standard and everyone needs to live to this standard. And that's how Like, you know, I mean, your farm needs to be like this picturesque setting, and you need to have perfectly set up 3-board fence and a red barn with white trim and yada yada, you know. And it's just it makes it feel so unattainable for so many people
Yes.
who really just want to keep a few chickens in their backyard so they can have eggs for their family.
Right.
Like, we've totally lost what the goal should be here. And
Right.
you know, and I mean, we can go on this for another episode, but like going into these gardening groups, and you will get like raked over the coals if you are not gardening to their like utopia. Because even if you spray something organic, oh no, you can't do that. That's
Right.
wrong. That's going to hurt something.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, it's going to hurt the caterpillars that are eating my tomatoes.
Yeah, I think you know, people like to get, you know, it's like a virtue if you don't use any chemicals in your garden, or it's, you know, a virtue if you have curtains on your nest boxes, or you know what I mean? Like, they get up on their high horse and say, well, I'm better because,
Right.
and
And
it
maybe
makes it
that's-
look unattainable.
Right. And I mean, and I was actually just thinking about this earlier today, was like, when did people become so interested in how other people live their lives? And maybe that's it. Maybe it's because they want to be able to like feel better somehow. So they
Right.
have to they have to know everything about your life so they can find something wrong, so that then they can point out how you are wrong and they're right, because that
Right.
makes them feel better about
I
themselves.
saw a woman, she had I don't know, five kits in a wire cage. They're almost ready for butcher. And somebody
I
said,
thought you said like human kids there for a minute. I was
I
like,
said kits, rabbit kits.
keep
Let's
going.
put that out there. And they were in a wire cage because
Yeah.
we're farmers. That's how you raise meat rabbits. And she had 3 people get on there and talk about what a terrible person she was, that those rabbits were on wire cages. And I'm like, you know, what is the quote? You know, farming's easy when your plow is a pencil and you're 1,000 miles from the cornfield, right? So I actually commented on her post with that, because, you know, everything looks different when you're 1,000 miles from the cornfield. It looks like it'd be super
Right.
easy, but believe it or not, people, rabbits shouldn't actually be raised most of the time in solid cages unless they're huge, because they have more problems, because they're
poop a
sitting in
lot.
they're sitting in their feces like all day.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's probably the biggest reason why I decided to come back to this lifestyle, I guess you could say. Because like I grew up around farming. My first jobs were on farms, and then I decided I was tired of getting dirty for a living. So I went and got a business degree so I could work in an office and be a glorified secretary and hate every second of it. So I'm back. But that's not why I decided to come back to this. A big reason was because I saw how detached people were becoming from their food supply, and I did not want that, like, my children to be like that.
Right.
I wanted them to see all the good, bad, and indifferent about it, but I wanted them to at least know what was real and what was just propaganda they were being fed. So basically, raise your kids better than you were raised if you were raised in that type of an environment. So, all right. And on that note, all right. Well, we thank you for joining us today, and come check us out and support us on our Patreon at Grounded in Simplicity.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Grounded in Simplicity podcast. If we were able to help you in any way, please share this episode with a friend, and also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. You can also join us over on Patreon at Grounded in Simplicity and help to support this podcast, as well as become a patron and get a behind the scenes look at the creation of our podcast, and even have some input on future episodes.
Catch you next time.